Okay, in this video, we're going to take a look at a problem from our math lab where we want to find the distance between the 2 points and the midpoint of a line segment joining them. So we have the point 6, -5, and -6, 4. So let's remember, we'll draw a picture here on the Cartesian plane. Okay, so we have, we'll call this, so 6, -5 is going to be down here, and -6, 4 is going to be up here in the second quadrant. Okay, and we could draw a line connecting these 2 points, and from that we can drop and make a right triangle. So we can look at our y component and our x component. Now we want to look at the length of our y component. So to do that, we want to take our top point minus our low point. So let's take a look at what our points are. So here in the y direction, we are up here at 4, and we go down to -5. Okay, and this is for the y. And in the x, we're going to go from 6 and -6. Okay, so if I wanted to find the actual height or the length of this y component, I could take my top end point, which is 4, and subtract my low end point, which is -5. And if we subtract those, we'll see we have the 2 negatives, so it's 4 plus 5, or 9. Okay, so this height right here is 9. In my x direction, I have my right endpoint minus my left endpoint, which is -6. Okay, so that becomes 6 plus 6, or 12. Okay, so the x component is 12. Okay, so now I have a right triangle, and I can solve for the hypotenuse. Recall the Pythagorean theorem that in a right triangle, if you take the square of both legs and add it together, that's equal to the square of the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse, of course, being the side opposite the right angle, which, since this has to be the largest angle, makes this the longest side. So I already found the length of my x and y, so I can just add this together after I square them, and I could say that we'll call the hypotenuse c. That c is going to equal, or c squared is going to equal the sum of these two things. So here, c squared is going to equal 81 plus 144. Okay, so we add those together, we get 225. So c squared is going to equal 225. I take the square root of both sides. That gives me that c equals 15. So the distance between the 2 points is 15. Now, I used the Pythagorean theorem, and I did that purposely because I wanted to now relate this to the distance formula. You notice we took, here's c, which is the hypotenuse, that is the distance, and that's the square root of the sum of the squares. So if we just go to this next page, the distance formula is going to equal the square root of the x component squared, which is x2 minus x1, okay, plus the difference in the y component squared, y2 minus y1. Okay, so if I wrote it out, it'd be like d equals square root of x2 minus x1. Notice that is our length of our y component of the triangle, plus y2 minus y1, which is the length of our y component, and that gives us our distance. This is really just a Pythagorean theorem. Now, as far as finding the midpoint, recall the midpoint is going to be like kind of like the average. You're going to add the two x's and divide by 2 to get your x coordinate. All right, so the midpoint is going to have an x coordinate and a y coordinate. The x coordinate is going to be the sum of the two x's divided by 2. So that's the midpoint, or the average. And then you average the y values and divide by 2. So here we had our x values to be 6 and negative 6. So I think we can see that that is going to be a 0, but let's just see. So we have 6 plus negative 6 over 2. Okay. And our y values, let's go back and take a look. That's going to be negative 5 and 4. So negative 5 plus 4 over 2. Okay. Now as we simplify these, 6 plus negative 6 is the same thing as 6 minus 6, which is 0 over 2, which is just 0. And negative 5 plus 4 is negative 1. Divided by 2 is negative 1 half. Okay. So this point right here is the midpoint. And we can see that on our graph. Let's go back to the first page. So 0, negative 1 half. So 0, negative 1 half. Well, I guess it would be about right here. If I could have drawn it right, it would be 0, negative 1 half. So it actually is on the y-axis. All right, I hope you found that video helpful. Let me know if you have any more questions.